in the auditorium. Welcome to WIP Day 5. It's been a great journey so far, and I'm sure there will be more to come. So today we'll be talking about looking beyond the edge, deep tech investment. It's a great time to be here with great panelists, where we'll be taking a sneak peek beyond the edge and talk about deep tech investment. Yesterday we had Rafic and had a great talk about the mega trends in deep tech, and he will be joining us today in the panel to have a deep dive into all different areas about the trends and investments in deep tech specifically. Rafic got a great experience in various senior roles in academia, research, and industry as a founding partner of Global Founders Executive Fellow, Executive Director in Abu Dhabi Education Council, Vice President for Research at Masdar Institute of Science and Technology, Dean of the College of Information Technology at UAE University, Professor at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and many more roles. His research got funded by industry leaders such as IBM, Intel, NSF, and DARPA that resulted in great discoveries and that has been deployed in the industry in different areas. Currently, Rafic heads the technologist at Mubadala Ventures and a speaker at Global Platform. Rafic will be accompanied by Professor Derya Baran, who is with us today here, and is an associate professor at Material Science and Engineering Division at KAUST, affiliated with KAUST Solar Research Center, and a fellow at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and a co-founder and chief engineer of the Red Sea Farms used to be called, and Web of Chair this year. So good to have you on board, Derya. And also we'll have with us Chayma Bouazza, who's the regional manager at the Middle East at PASQAL. PASQAL is a quantum computing company. We'll talk more about that. A full-stack quantum computing hardware player offering quantum processors based on neutral atom technologies. She's in charge of building collaboration with public and private stakeholders with the goal to build quantum ecosystem in the region. Previously, she worked as an innovation consultant on a wide range of topics such as mobility, nanotechnology, renewables. Chayma has a PhD in ultra-cold atoms at École Normale Supérieure. And also we'll have with us Noor Andijani. Noor, she is a bioscience master's student and is the founder and CEO of a company called Turkeys. It's a software that helps people to achieve their goals in less time with less effort. As a neuroscientist, Noor is using her expertise to make a real impact on the mental health and productivity industries. Great to have you here on board with us. Noor will be excusing us in the next maybe 15 minutes or so. She got a flight to catch, but thanks for making the time with us in here. Yeah? And I'll start with you, Rafic, today. So thanks for being with us today, and I really enjoyed the talk, and it was really inspiring. And you mentioned yesterday in your talk, given the status quo and the projected growth of the energy consumption for ICT industry, it is expected that we will be consuming 100% of the energy generation by 2040 or so. So the question is like, what's going to happen in terms of the, let's say, other heavy energy consuming industries like heavy manufacturing and let's say residential and so on and so forth? What are the alternatives, and what's the, let's say, alternatives going to be in order to harvest energies for such consumptions?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning. So, listen, climate change is a global threat. And it's a global threat, meaning all the industries that we have, everything we do, right, has to take that into consideration. So whether it is ICT, whether it is electrifying buildings, whether it is electrifying transport, everything that uses energy, we have to take a second look at. And the point about ICT consuming more and more energy is very real. So if you take a look at some of the machine learning accelerator chips, for example, that are coming out, massive chips, typically that you could expect them to consume upwards of 400 watts, 650 watts, more in some cases. And this is a trend that we're on, given that our hunger for data, given that we are heading into the age of smart edge, where we have sensors all over the place collecting more and more and more data. All of this needs more and more processing. Chips are getting bigger and bigger in terms of what we need them to do. The iPhone 13 has an application processor called the AP15. It uses 15 billion transistors, right? And so energy is a challenge to all of us. And the point being that we are on a trend now that the total ICT consumption of energy is increasing rapidly. And we have to do something about it. If we don't do something about it, then we're heading in that direction that you talked about. So just to summarize my point, I think that all the industries have to be cognizant and aware of climate change. And this is a serious issue for the planet. It's a serious issue for all of us. The ICT industry has a responsibility to find new ways to reduce the energy consumption. It's a responsibility on that. The problem is that if we keep building integrated circuits the way we are building them today, right, we are not going to get there. We have to find alternative ways that substantially reduce the energy consumption of ICT systems.
Thank you, Rafic. So to build into that, Derya, so yesterday Rafic talked about the different materials and the scarcity of those materials into key energy solutions, such as kind of energy storage and the scarcity of lithium and the scarcity of silicon in the case of ICT development, and so on and so forth. So what are the alternatives, or let's say new lands that we need to discover or being discovered as materials, alternative materials that have really good abundance and more sustainable for future development of energy storage or energy generation in general?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you very much, Hattan and everybody. Thanks for coming. Yeah, it's a very complex question, actually, because I've been thinking when Rafic was explaining, because there are two different perspectives for the energy consumption, at least from my side. One is we somehow call it like IoT and small devices and electronics. And the other is, as you say, like heavy industries, huge polymer processings, and literally required to have like energy to the houses and so on. So if I look for the maybe IoT type devices or electronics, I know they're very power hungry, and definitely climate change is a fact, and everybody needs to consider this. And also silicon, right? As a semiconductor, we have faced that huge challenge that with the whole pandemic and so on, how's the production and so. So I think the world also realizes that we should not rely on either one country or certain geographical regions to have either semiconductors or new energy alternative materials. And there is a huge work going on, of course, for synthetic materials, right? That are semiconductors, and that you can also use them as energy alternatives. It has been thinking for so long on, for instance, like flexible electronics or integrated flexible electronics that are made with synthetic materials that could supply power, because they are considered as still low power. I know they're power hungry and they need to be less and less power, but they're considered as low power applications. And I think these synthetic semiconductors can find a really way to penetrate to the market in that perspective, because the lifetime of most of those devices are also relatively shorter than a factory, for instance, that exists for years. And of course, that's partially what I'm working on as well. I think that's why I'm today here. But I'm at the verge to think, those materials are coming from oil. So thinking of sustainability in science, there's no one alternative or solution, otherwise everybody would work on that, right? And those synthetic materials now, as I said, come from oil or oil byproducts, and definitely it brings the question then, as also Rafic mentioned, that the industries think very, very carefully and responsibly where we are going to use oil like the most effective, you know, and what will be the highest value products that will benefit each industry. You know? And I think that can maybe tie into the whole sustainability for this energy. And in terms of like bigger picture and require, the world needs energy and affordable energy, I think is another huge question. And of course, there are alternatives out there and people trying to make innovations in that, like solar energy, wind is out there. But I think what is, or fusion, we talked yesterday, is it going to make it or not? But the question we should ask ourselves, rather than which energy or which energy resources, what are our resources to look? I think in the future, and the most important thing is localization, and to figure out what are the available resources for those regions to actually use responsibly for a longer term.
Very interesting, very, very interesting. So it's a quest towards the discovery of the unknown, where we need to think in an unconventional way, unlike what we have done over the past 100 years or so. Yeah. So going over to Chayma, and Chayma has joined us here representing PASQAL. Can you please share with the audience what is PASQAL and what do you do at PASQAL?
Thank you, Hattan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this great panel. So PASQAL is a French company. We are a startup that was founded in 2019, and we build quantum computers. We build the hardware, the software applications, and the full stack service. And our technology is a little bit special. There are different quantum technologies that exist. In our case, we use atoms to code the information and to process the information. So quantum computing is this emerging technology that has a huge potential. We are still in the emergent phase, of course, but the promise of quantum is incredible. And the way we should look at it is like a new type of computing systems, a new type of processors that will come and help on solving some specific complex problems. Quantum will not replace our computers. Quantum will be there to address a class of very complex problems where we need to find an optimal solution among different possibilities, taking into account many variables and many constraints. So for such problems, a classical computer, what we call classical computer using transistors, etc., 0 and 1s to code the information, will take an exponentially increasing time to find that optimal solution, where quantum will take increasing time, but that increase will be much slower than an exponential increase. So quantum computing can help us, for example, on many fields. It will impact almost all industries. But I can give some examples. In mobility, we talk a lot about electrical mobility and electrical cars to reduce carbon emission, etc. But one key challenge is how are we going to optimize the charging of all those cars? If we are reaching 400 million cars by 2040, I guess, and we have a number of charging stations, how can we make sure that all those cars will be charged efficiently and reduce the total time, and also use what we call the vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle, so the car has a battery to the grid when it's not used and charge it when we use it. And to do this optimization, it's a very complex problem to do it on classical computers. Quantum computers can help on such a problem to find the optimal distributions of cars on the available charging stations, taking into account the constraints. So this one direction quantum can help. Quantum also can help on reducing the energy consumption. So we are talking about computing power that will require more and more energy. Today, the quantum processors that are available have much lower energy consumption than classical computers, and the scaling of the systems will not double the energy consumption like it is the way with classical computing. So we are trying to gain on that aspect as well. And the third aspect we can win on is the natural resources. So we are talking about materials, the use of silicon to build the chips, etc. But if we start looking to other alternatives for quantum, like using ions or atoms, then we have different type of resources. And in our case, 1 gram of rubidium atoms is sufficient to operate for 1 year, for example. So we gain on that. It doesn't mean that quantum will solve all our problems, but maybe it's a technology to help addressing some challenges.
Very interesting. So it's kind of a unique solution for specific or niche challenges that we're trying to address in here before it gets into the mainstream solutions as we move forward. Yeah.
Yes, so we start with some, what we call the low-hanging fruits. We are going to try to find those problems that are really challenging, but can be addressed with today's technology, the level of maturity of the quantum computing today. And with time, of course, the technology will continue developing, and it will also open other doors that we cannot even imagine today.
That's right.
So it's the same with the digital revolution.
Yes.
Imagine yourself in the 50s with this big machine by IBM. Could you then imagine all the possibilities that we have today?
Yes.
Today, in quantum, we are in the 50s for quantum. You can see it a little bit like this.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Chayma. Much appreciated. Noor, over to you. So it's like, Noor, you're doing your master's and you're also building your company. So can you share with the audience what is Technologist and what got you inspired to get that started?
Yeah, of course. So basically, just relating to what you were saying, like we are in the age of optimizing everything, making everything efficient. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes, like I notice around me and my other and people like students around me, we have this long to-do list. We sit down, we want to work on a task. And then we get an email, and then you get a text, and then you get distracted with this. You get distracted. All of these alerts, these notifications. And so personally, I have ADHD, so it's even harder for me to focus on my tasks. And I think this is a problem for a lot of people. So that's why we created Technologist, which is a software to help improve people's focus and help them actually achieve that to-do list that they write down and they want to, sit down and finish. And so it uses technology such as deep learning, and it's based on neuroscience. And that's where my background is coming in and helping. And so Technologist is basically to maximize people's productivity so that we can also reduce the amount of effort we're putting in and get our work done at the same time.
All right, thank you very much, Noor. Yeah, Noor might be excusing us in a few minutes, but please feel free to catch your flight whenever you need to. So, Rafic, going back to your question. Yeah, thank you. So, Rafic, going back to your talk yesterday, as you wish. I think we're comfortable. Yeah, whatever makes you comfortable. So, Rafic, going back to your talk yesterday, you emphasized on the low success rate for startups, right? As an investor, usually you really wanted to, actually, it's one of the things is it's VC investment is one of the highest asset classes and investment kind of spectrum, if you will, yeah? So the question is what drives Mubadala in terms of investing into deep tech startups, given the fact that it's higher in terms of the risk and in comparison to mainstream solutions such as fintech, SaaS, or e-commerce, and so on. So what is the drive for Mubadala to get into this space?
So in general, investing in startups is risky business.
Yes.
Right? And we do invest in fintech, and we do invest in SaaS, and we invest across the board.
Yeah.
And we do invest in deep tech as well. I think this is what makes venture capital special, is that we take risk. but we take risk in an intelligent way, and we take risk by also, we try to overcome risk by also partnering with the startups that we invest in. We view them as our partners. Yeah. And we use our global ecosystem and our know-how to help them succeed. And on the question of startups failing, statistics show that about 9 out of every 10 startup fails. And the reason why they fail is complex, but I can summarize it as follows. The first is that many startups fail because they don't fully understand the competitive landscape. Startups need to understand the competition as much as the competition understands itself. They need to focus on knowing their points of differentiation in a clear manner, not convincing themselves that they're differentiated, but actually putting their shoes in the shoes of the competition, understanding the competition, and then asking themselves, are we really differentiated? Mm-hmm. So that's one. Two is the business model. That's another reason why some startups fail, is they may not follow the trends, the latest trends. For example, the latest trends in many different fields include platform-type solutions that offer you the flexibility that even if, let's say, the application fails, that the platform will live on, yeah, and they can capture value from the platform. So the business model itself is another reason why they fail. And third reason why startups fail is sometimes they don't spend sufficient time thinking from the point of view of their customer. Mm-hmm. So they need to have a maniacal focus on the customer and how the customer perceives the application, how the customer perceives the solutions, yeah, and what the customer wants. So I think these are some of the top reasons why they fail.
But isn't this fact at some places been debunked by providing full support systems where they have a full system that kind of support those kind of startup creation and venture builders or different ecosystems, and they achieve like 60 or 70% success rates in some scenarios?
Yeah, I mean the 9 out of 10 is a global figure. And you're talking about accelerators, incubators that help startups.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. They can make a difference. And we as Mubadala, we feel we can make a big difference as well, yes, because of our experience in, yes, this field.
Definitely. And what's interesting you into, or Mubadala specifically, into the deep tech space or into the deep tech startups, given the fact that the risk factor will be doubled in there in comparison to other solutions?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a risk-reward type of an equation, right? And I feel that, given the challenges that the planet is facing today, that over the next decade, deep tech is going to play a key role. And this decade that we're in, when we look back at it in 10 years, could very well be defined as a decade of deep tech.
Yeah. So do you see any difference, sorry, but this is just a follow-on into questions, you're triggering questions in my brain. But do you see a difference in your portfolio, deep tech portfolio, in comparison to the fintech solutions or the e-commerce within Mubadala's portfolio?
A difference in what sense?
In the success rate or the return on financials, like on the return on investments, or is it approximately the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on the time window that you look at that question. So if I'm looking at right now, the economy is not doing well. SaaS is not doing well. The biosciences, which you can regard as deep tech, got hit a little bit as well. But if I look at it over a period of time, like 5, 10 years, and you need to do that when you look at deep tech, then it's a different scenario. But if I look at it right now, snapshot right now, deep tech is looking pretty good.
Good to hear that. Yeah, that's good news for us. So thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Which that drives me to my question to Derya. So Derya, you're a co-founding team member within Red Sea Farm, or Red Sea. So for the audience, I wanted to share with them what is Red Sea, and I wanted also to highlight on your funding journey. How was it, given the fact that it's real stuff, and how you get into Red Sea Farms?
Yeah, thank you. So Red Sea, which now we are rebranded globally, and for people in KAUST might know as Red Sea Farms before, is actually an innovation-led agtech company help feeding the world sustainably. And we are developing technologies to reduce the footprint on food, water, and energy in harsh climates. So our motivation comes from, of course, where we lived in Saudi Arabia now 6 years, having a lot of abundance of energy resources like sun, having very scarce and high energy demanding fresh water, right? And also being like in a mission to Mars land, that almost impossible to grow food. So I think like if you manage to bring a sustainable food supply here, you could actually develop it globally. That will help so many people, I can tell. And that's what we're working on. And like in basically 3 different divisions, I can actually tie. Now you talked about quantum computing. I think maybe it will help us as well, because I say, you know, in agriculture, the technologies have been developed like almost hundreds of years ago. When you look at it, there's like almost no deep tech, no high tech have been utilized, but everybody wants food every day, right?
Yes, that's right.
My mind just cannot take this. So one part is, of course, we developed our proprietary sensing and monitoring systems that can be actually leveled up to enterprise level, because then you were saying it's fantastic. So in the future, I don't know where the farming will go on the food and plant science, but I can imagine there will be huge companies controlling and monitoring the plant world and want to look for maybe thousands of greenhouses all at once, like what is the water consumption, what is the energy consumption, how can I make them more efficient, and so on. Requires a lot of control, monitoring, and early detection, you know, for a lot of plant growth. So that part is that what we are focusing with our core team, Cortex, and use it for our technologies at the moment. And the second part is, of course, the huge issue in Saudi and the region, which is a little different than the others in the food tech, is the cooling. So here, Saudi uses 70% of its domestic electricity to cooling. It's ridiculous. And it's not done in sustainable ways as well. So we are working to develop technologies that actually we developed already, which will be productized this year in 2023. Technologies to reduce the cooling demand in the greenhouses so that actually you can save on energy and so on. And the third part is was a natural outcome of our technologies, to say, because we wanted to prove all our technologies in the greenhouses or controlled environment agriculture to produce food, right, and crops. And then we had tomatoes. And in this region, we are also in the produce business to develop and have actually locally grown, sustainable and organic food that you can find now in Saudi markets, Tamimi, Carrefour, and others in Saudi, and also expanding in the GCC. So coming back again, I think deep tech and deep tech investment into our journey, I think people had a bit of hard time to understand that we're a technology company and we're developing these technologies as an umbrella, or as a platform, as you say, because I didn't even mention that we are in the plant side, we are developing these superhero crops, right? That you guys know that will be stress tolerant, maybe easily to say, which will, I think, completely change the face of agriculture in the future because of the simply harsh climates that we are living in. So in that sense, our journey in Red Sea was fantastic, I would say, and it was very well received in the region. Maybe in a good way because we were hit by a whole pandemic, right? And when we were working with this in Saudi, the whole borders closed. Saudi being exporting 80% of its food, and food security become like the top priority. And also a lot of other countries realize that this is actually quite important to grow your own food and do it in the most sustainable way if you want to make it for a longer term. So we had a lot of in-kingdom investors in our journey, and I think we have gone through a successful fundraising phase. But we worked a lot, and we are still working a lot, and grow our team, a core team on the technology, of course. And now, one thing, maybe, I don't know how online this is, but it's a good way of speaking with other startups here. One wall we hit to grow was a little bit of, you're a Saudi company, all your investors are from Saudi. How are you going to be a global company if you don't have any global investors, right? So that was a challenge for us early on and made us realize, well, this is a global issue already, and we know we are growing from here, but we need to show that actually to the others that, globally people are buying in this. And that's when we had our US investor, who's with us today and who is also using our control technologies in their own spaces, which is fantastic. And that's how we actually came to the next phase. And in 2023, we will be running for a Series A, which we were discussing a little bit with Rafic already. And it's quite exciting. It's quite exciting because it is such a global thing that you feel the impact that it can create, and also it is the responsibility of all our investors that they believe in us and we need to deliver. So yeah, just enjoying the ride so far.
Wow. Well, what a journey, and still in the making. I'm sure more to come, and you haven't tried their cherry tomato. It's really delicious, so don't miss out into it while you're in here with us. Yeah, go to Tamimi and find it, and it's like, it's really great, and what a journey into it. And what's really interesting is that you have those technologies as well that are concatenated to each other to provide a really holistic solution, because the cooling system can be deployed in all different kind of solutions, right? And let's say Iris, or let's say the solar panel kind of, let's say the transparent solar panel solution also can be deployed in all different kind of industries. Similarly with the seed, let's say seed kind of manufacturing and so on. So it's like, what really brought all those solutions together, and how did you manage to pull it all together and focus it into one single industry and solution and stay focused into it? Because you can deploy the cooling system in all different, let's say, solutions or environments, like, I don't know, poultry business or all the other kind of industries that you can deploy.
That's actually a wonderful question, and that's, Rafic was also talking about why they fail. I think focus is also one of them. If you cannot focus, you will fail. And you're absolutely right, because we have several different technologies, and for instance, we had this heat blocking and transparent photovoltaics technology, and everybody was pushing us with, what about buildings? What about buildings? Why don't you put them in buildings? In Abu Dhabi, they're like huge skyscrapers and so on. And we actually hustled a lot in the beginning, and we were like, yes, it is a market, it's an amazing market, and glass is the most widely used cladding material in buildings and architecture. But it was, I think, such a good business decision and company-wise and focus, as you said, because we looked into the market entry potential and how it can be utilized with other technologies, because then it was like a product itself and a whole business line itself, right? Similarly for the plant science, I think people bother Mark every day. You can be the next Monsanto, seeds, different seeds and so on. But we wanted to bring it, because you do it in the controlled environment agriculture, we wanted to bring it to the whole holistic solution. And the team really helped, because being Mark on the plant side, Ryan water, and me energy, somehow in a very good way, I think team is also one way you failed very early on, pushed us to stick to the focus, you know. But I completely agree. Every time when we do brainstorming, I was like, yeah, you can use these things in so many different, like cooling, for instance. But you know what? Maybe one day the business branch will actually develop so far that it can open up its own path.
Industries and
which,
paths
yes,
and
exactly. And it is possible.
Yeah, so focus is the key kind
Focus
of
is the
word
key
that you
to a
had
certain
in
level
the-
that you survive a little sustainably,
especially
I think,
with their
you know.
investors, yeah.
Yes,
So-
because we look to General Electrics, for instance, GE, you know, they also started with like very core business, but now you look this in GE healthcare, GE, I don't know, in aerospace, and like lots of different businesses that you can enter. I'm dreaming here, but one day, but why not, hey?
All right, cool. So going to Chayma. Chayma, so one of the things that you mentioned earlier on is that you're trying to build quantum computing community and expand into that. And it's such a challenging task for a new technology that's just being developed and people are trying to understand and debate as well. It's like the fundamentals of it, just as we had before this panel into it. So can you expand into what's your ambitious goals, let's say, in the next 12 to 18 months in terms of community building in quantum computing community within the region and within the country?
That's a great question, because the technology is still in the emergent phase. So there is no a single actor that will be able to develop it and reach the maturity. That's why we need really the effort from different stakeholders. And to build that ecosystem, what do we need? We need the researchers to continue developing the state of the technology and to push it to the limit. We need talents, of course, to work on both R&D and production, build those machines, develop the algorithms, develop applications, etc. We need investment. We need users to test those solutions, brave enough and willing to take this risk to spend an amount of money which is not negligible on some proof of concept project. Maybe it will not be useful today, but they are investing for the future. And the fifth key actor is the government. Today, quantum technologies are considered as strategic technologies for nations. That's why you see many countries announcing their national plans for developing quantum technologies. So now, if we are trying to look where can we find those 5 key elements, we started in Europe because we are a spin-off from a research group from France, and we have these resources in Europe. Going to North America because there the quantum market is the most developed and we can have good students, good researchers, investment, etc. But I think the Middle East is a very good region as well to fund those resources. And a key challenge in the field today is to find the talents. Talents are becoming really the scarcity resource, and you need to go and find them wherever you can find them. And we are here in KAUST, and KAUST is a great place to start. Great researchers, brilliant students, together with clients and partners that are interested about this technology. They have this appetite to new developments and innovation. So we have this collaboration with Aramco. We have great support from the government, MISA and MCIT. So we can find all these key elements to build this ecosystem. And as PASQAL, we'll bring the technology, the hardware, and try to build on that.
The software on top of it and build that
All of it.
Are you heading towards, let's say, having kind of an open source development platforms and so on, or is it going to be kind of enclosed and proprietary?
So the coding framework that we are using, that we developed at PASQAL, is called Pulsar, and it is based on Python, so framework that is very well known and used, and it is open source. To give this access to students, users everywhere to develop their own algorithms, to start testing their ideas, etc. Of course, we are also developing proprietary algorithms and softwares that are patent and protected, so developed by PASQAL. But the fact to give this open source platform framework for coding, it's a key element to drive and to enable the development of this technology further.
Great to hear that. Yeah, we look forward to joining into that journey to create that community moving forward. Rafic, going back to your talk yesterday as well, you mentioned transistors was one of the main game changers in the last century. So given Mubadala's, let's say, investment strategy, what are the future technologies that are you bidding on that are going to be game changers moving forward?
Yes, I do believe the integrated circuit is one of the greatest innovations of all time. And we see, we live, we rely on the integrated circuit every day in just about everything that we do. But we do need a different path forward, as we talked about earlier, in terms of new types of devices. And one area that's interesting is doing processing in memory. Right? So when you do that, you avoid the time loss between processing and getting information from memory to process on. You also, by the nature of the types of memories that we're looking at, the energy consumed by the overall system is much lower. So that could be a path forward. New types, of completely different devices, even in the future, molecular devices might play a role. We don't have answers yet, but we are watching this very carefully. Innovations on the application side, I think if you look at generative AI, we are very excited about that field and about APIs that are going to come out in that field, just like, for example, Uber built on Google Maps. I think generative AI is going to be in a completely different and higher dimension. So I think the future is bright when it comes to science and technology. Never doubt solutions will be there.
All right, beautiful. Great to hear that. So definitely taking good notes, Derya. So Derya, one question for you before we go to the crowd and ask for questions from the... Yeah, maybe we got 3 minutes here to go. Yeah, but maybe one question I wanted to share with you is so what drives you to, let's say, push for your research beyond publications and go above and beyond in terms of the challenge of building a new venture or commercializing a technology? It's like, what is that drive that is like making you to
I'm
push
glad
that
there are
far?
not many faculty here. It's like I'll be actually honest maybe here. So I never saw publications as a way to sort of prove myself or as a way to prove yourself in academia. I know it's an output, and I always say to my students as well, publications are just output of the great work that you're doing. It could be something else, going to conference or like other things. So I was always driven to solve some challenges, I guess, and that those things resulted in publications, maybe is the right way to say. And I was always thinking to look for like what this thing can help to solve other things, or how can we connect those type of those points to a better community and a planet. That's what always helped me. Yeah. And then throughout this web, I have to say, it made me proud to think more like, honestly, purpose is the key to do great things in life, I realize.
Yeah, sure. Maybe one last question to you, Rafic, before we go to Chayma, which is, so Hollywood usually overestimates the human capability to arrive at future technologies in sci-fi movies. For example, Back to the Future expected virtual communication by 2015, and we got there much earlier. Total Recall movie expected autonomous taxis by 2084. while we're living it today in Waymo and Cruise, as you talked about it yesterday as well, in different states. So how far do you think Hollywood is off in underestimating the power of science and technology and translating into solutions and new ventures and products?
Yeah, I tell you, when I was a child, I was fascinated by a TV series called Star Trek. And when I say when I was a child, that's a long time ago. So this is, the original. And they were using wireless phones to communicate with each other. And they were using devices where you could actually see the person you were talking to, see a video of the person you're talking to. And this was, back then, unheard of. Right? It happened. It happened. As I said yesterday, if you can dream it, if you can think it, you can make it. And I think Hollywood, in that sense, although sometimes they're off a bit and sometimes they underestimate, but I think Hollywood plays a critical role in showing us what could be.
Yes, yeah. And Chayma, last question to you before I think we're running out of time in here. But when do you think quantum computing will be mainstream?
I think already we start to have the first industrial products available for some users. So we are starting to test those machines on real-world applications. So it is already here for some users. I don't think it will never become mainstream. Like supercomputers, they are not mainstream. They are from some specific problems for some specific users. And I believe that quantum computing will be another addition in data centers and in supercomputers like CPU and GPU. We talk about QPU, quantum processing units. So I don't think that we will have all our own quantum computers at house. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think this will happen in the near future, at least.
All right, cool. So I think we got some extra time for Q&As, yeah? Any pressing questions from the crowd? Yes, maybe we can take one or two.
Yes, thank you for the talk yesterday, Dr. Makki. I had a question that I wanted to ask, but we didn't have time. You were right that the first 2 decades of this century saw a lot of revolutions, a lot of innovation. However, the financial regime has changed. So the financial regime of 2023 is not the same as 2003 and 2013. Leverage has a higher premium now. So how do you see that changing the way VCs invest going forward? And I had just another question regarding supply chains. The pandemic showed us that lean supply chains, lean warehouses, lean workforces carry a hidden risk with them. So has that impacted the way VCs or startups see the world and the problems they're trying to solve going forward? Thank you.
Sure. So on your first question, we have to have a long-term view. Right? We cannot think in terms of just what's happening this year. You have to be a patient investor if you're going to really make it as an investor. And so we look at investing in terms of periods of time, not an instant of time. But to some extent, it's true what you said, that if you look at the global VC investments in the third quarter of last year, they declined, I would say, in a significant way over investments at the same time, in the same time frame the previous year. Right? 2021 was an amazing year for VC investment. It was an amazing year for technology, and I think the pandemic accelerated technology adoption, and the technology sector benefits significantly from it. So from our standpoint, we're not looking at what's happening just today. We're looking beyond today. We look at 5- and 10-year horizons, especially in the area of deep tech. You just have to be more patient. On the issue of supply chain, I think the pandemic caused some industries to slow down their orders from these foundries, like, for example, TSMC and the global foundries. And this is a very expensive business, semiconductor manufacturing business. And so, you know, you can't just make chips and having things down. You have chips have to do something, and so you make them for some application for somebody. So you have to have orders ahead of time. And so, if an industry, let's say, looks at the pandemic and says, "Oh, we have to slow down our orders," then the manufacturing industry, what we call them fabs, the semiconductor fabs, they have to move to other customers, right? Because they have to keep their fabs going. So I think we saw a little bit of that, and that affected the supply chains for some industries more than others, right? So it's a very complex issue, supply chain in the semiconductor space. It's been working well to some extent for a long time. It didn't work well during the pandemic, but the industry learned and will evolve.
All right, thank you very much, Rafic. I'm afraid we run out of time. So we'll leave maybe questions for follow-on, and we really appreciate your time and patience with us, yeah? And I'd like to thank also our esteemed panelists for being with us here and sharing their great knowledge and experiences as well with us. And thank you very much. We'll look forward to see you in another session during web. All right, thank you. Thank you. Let's come back.